Any attempt to restrict drinking and driving here is viewed by some as downright undemocratic.
It's kind of getting common is when a fella can't put in a hard day's work, put in 11, 12 hours a day, and then get in your truck and at least drink 1 or 2 beers.
They're making it laws where you can't drink when you want to. You have to wear a seatbelt when you're driving. And pretty soon we're going to be a communist country.
Laws are meant to keep order, but some have aged like forgotten relics from a bygone era. The 1980s were a time of great social change, yet some bizarre laws from that period still linger on the books today. While most of us are used to living with modern rules and regulations, many of these strange laws exist in their original form, waiting to catch us off guard. These outdated laws often reflect outdated beliefs, deeply rooted in cultural or religious traditions. They can seem perplexing, even absurd, but surprisingly, they continue to have legal power. In this video, we will look at 10 bizarre laws from the 1980s that still exist today. Some quirky, others hard to believe. From limiting your ice cream consumption to banning flirtation with your eyebrows, it's clear these laws are relics of a past society that was much more conservative in its approach to public behavior. Keep watching to find out which laws are still on the books, and just how long these strange rules have been a part of our legal system. No ice cream on Sundays, Tennessee. Tennessee's blue laws are among the most unusual remnants of its past, and one of the oddest is the ban on selling ice cream cones on Sundays. While this rule may sound laughable today, it was rooted in religious traditions meant to discourage indulgence on the Sabbath. These laws were designed to preserve Sunday as a day of rest and reflection, encouraging people to avoid activities considered excessive or unnecessary, including the enjoyment of something as simple as ice cream. Despite the fact that this law is rarely enforced, it technically remains illegal to sell or consume an ice cream cone on Sundays in Tennessee. Though you might never be caught breaking this rule, the strange remnants of these blue laws are still a legal reality in certain parts of the country. The idea behind such laws was to keep Sundays sacred and to prevent anything that could be viewed as unnecessary pleasure. Even though the original intent of this law is almost entirely irrelevant today, it's still on the books, standing as a quirky reminder of a more restrictive time in American culture. No flirting with eyebrows. Alabama. Believe it or not, Alabama once passed a law that could technically land you in trouble for something as simple as raising an eyebrow. The law forbade suggestive eyebrow movements or winking in public, considering these actions as forms of public indecency. The origins of the law trace back to the early 20th century, when it was believed that flirtatious behavior in public spaces could lead to moral decay and inappropriate advances. While the law was undoubtedly a product of its time, it remains part of Alabama's legal history. So, if you're ever in the state and you can't resist the urge to raise an eyebrow, you could technically be breaking the law. Of course, no one is actually enforcing this strange rule in the modern era, and it would seem almost impossible to get arrested for such a harmless gesture today. However, this eyebrow law is still officially on the books, representing an odd time in history when society had a more rigid view of what constituted acceptable public behavior. Imagine a world where a wink could land you in hot water. No kissing on Sundays, Connecticut. Here's one for the romantics out there. Did you know that, once upon a time, it was illegal for married couples to kiss in public on Sundays in Connecticut? While this law is no longer enforced, it remains a curious vestige of a much stricter time, enacted as part of Connecticut's moral laws, which aimed to regulate behavior on the Sabbath. This prohibition against public displays of affection reflected the puritanical values that were once deeply embedded in the culture of the state. The idea behind the law was to maintain Sunday as a solemn day of worship, devoid of any distractions or indulgences. Public displays of affection were seen as a violation of that sacred space. Of course, the law is mostly irrelevant today, and any couple in Connecticut who kisses in public on a Sunday is unlikely to face any consequences. But it's strange to think that, just a few decades ago, something as innocent as a kiss could land you in legal trouble. Though largely forgotten now, this law remains an odd reminder of a time when religious and moral laws governed nearly every aspect of public life. Dancing is illegal on Sundays, Massachusetts. The idea that dancing could be illegal may seem utterly bizarre, but in Massachusetts, it was once the law, at least on Sundays. This regulation was a remnant of Puritan-era laws that sought to limit sinful activities on the Sabbath. Dancing, often associated with revelry and excitement, was deemed inappropriate for a day that was meant to be devoted to rest, reflection, and worship. The law, though rarely enforced today, was part of a broader set of rules designed to discourage what was considered frivolous or immoral behavior on Sundays. In fact, the strictness of these Puritan rules inspired the 1984 movie Footloose, in which a town enacts a similar ban on dancing, illustrating how these outdated laws were deeply rooted in American culture. Even though dancing has long since been decriminalized, the memory of such laws still lingers in certain communities where local customs or attitudes about Sunday behavior continue to hold sway. While Massachusetts may not be enforcing this strange rule today, it serves as a reflection of the once dominant cultural and religious views that influenced public life across the United States. No playing cards in public on Sundays, Pennsylvania. You're sitting at a table with friends on a Sunday afternoon, ready to break out a deck of cards for a fun game of poker or bridge, only to realize that it's actually illegal to play cards in public. Believe it or not, such a law existed in Pennsylvania, where playing cards on Sundays was forbidden for religious reasons. This rule was part of the state's larger set of blue laws, designed to regulate leisure activities on the Sabbath and ensure that Sunday was reserved for religious observance rather than secular pleasures. While the law is rarely enforced today, it still technically exists in some areas of Pennsylvania, where local authorities can theoretically issue fines for violating it. In the past, card games were considered distractions from the holy nature of the Sabbath, and such laws sought to curb any activity that might promote idleness or indulgence. The fact that something as innocuous as a game of cards could once be considered illegal reflects the strict moral codes that governed public life in the 1980s and before. Even though playing cards is no longer a crime, the law remains as a reminder of a time when Sunday activities were tightly controlled. Wearing red dresses is illegal, New York City. Walking through the streets of New York City, proudly wearing your favorite red dress, only to be told that you're breaking the law. While this may sound far-fetched, it's actually true, at least in a legal sense. An old law, dating back to the 19th century, prohibited women from wearing red dresses in public. This strange law was rooted in moral codes that considered red to be a symbol of immoral behavior. The idea behind it was to discourage women from dressing in a way that might be seen as attention-seeking or inappropriate. Though no one has been arrested for wearing red in New York City in modern times, the law still technically exists. The fact that such a law was once enacted reflects the deeply ingrained societal beliefs about women's behavior, particularly when it came to dress codes and public appearances. Despite its clear obsolescence today, this law has never been officially removed from the books. It serves as a fascinating reminder of the ways in which laws once sought to control personal expression, especially when it came to women's bodies and clothing. Though the red dress law is certainly a thing of the past, it remains as a quirky reminder of an era when fashion choices were heavily policed. No smoking in public, New Jersey, before it was mainstream. Long before smoking bans became widespread across the country, New Jersey had already passed a law that restricted smoking in public spaces. This early regulation was put in place to curtail undesirable behaviors and promote a cleaner, healthier public environment. At the time, smoking was considered not only a nuisance, but also a symbol of rebellious behavior. New Jersey's law reflected the growing concerns about the harmful effects of secondhand smoke and the need for a more refined, health-conscious society. Interestingly, this law predated the modern anti-smoking campaigns by several decades, and while it was never enforced as strictly as today's smoking bans, it stands as one of the earliest examples of public health policy aimed at smoking. While today, smoking in public places is widely prohibited across the nation, New Jersey's original law technically still exists. It's a testament to how society has evolved over the years In terms of public health and social standards, what's particularly curious about this early smoking ban is that it didn't receive much attention during its time. But looking back, it is one of the first legal measures to push for a smoke-free society, predating the larger movement that would sweep the country in the following decades. No pineapples in public, Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, there exists a bizarre law dating back to the 18th century that prohibits the display of pineapples in public. While it may sound like something out of a history book or a fairy tale, this rule was once taken very seriously. During colonial times, pineapples were a symbol of wealth and exclusivity, and they were often associated with rebellion or subversive activities. The law was enacted to control the display of these exotic fruits, which were considered a symbol of social defiance or protest. Over time, the law remained on the books, long after pineapples had ceased to hold any particular meaning. While it is obviously not enforced today, this strange prohibition stands as a curious reminder of Rhode Island's colonial past. The fact that pineapples were once seen as such a potent symbol speaks to how the social hierarchy of the time worked and the lengths to which authorities went to preserve it. Pineapples, once a symbol of rebellion and social status, were so significant that they warranted regulation. In modern times, it seems almost unbelievable that a fruit could be illegal to display, yet the law still exists, although no one would ever expect it to be enforced. No lace clothing allowed, Virginia. In Virginia, a bizarre colonial-era law still technically prohibits women from wearing lace. The law was put in place during the 18th century as part of a broader set of moral codes designed to enforce modesty and curb vanity. Lace, which was considered an extravagant and unnecessary luxury, was seen as a symbol of overindulgence and personal pride. The law was an effort to promote humility and prevent displays of wealth and vanity, which were viewed as distractions from the more important virtues of modesty and simplicity. Though the law is no longer relevant in the modern era, it has never been officially repealed. Lace, once considered too ostentatious for women, was deemed inappropriate for public wear, and the regulation of it was meant to reflect the societal values of the time. While today, lace clothing is a popular fashion choice, and no one would think twice about wearing it in public, the law still exists on Virginia's books. The fact that a law regulating the fabric of women's clothing was enacted reflects the deeply rooted social expectations that governed personal appearance, especially for women. This odd remnant of the past is a fascinating glimpse into a time when public dress codes were tightly controlled to maintain social order. No bathing on Sundays, Virginia, again. Imagine a world where bathing on Sundays could land you in legal trouble. That was once the reality in Virginia, where a law was enacted that prohibited people from bathing on Sundays. This regulation was part of a larger set of blue laws designed to ensure that Sunday remained a day of worship and rest. Bathing, a private and personal activity, was seen as an indulgence that could detract from the solemn observance of the Sabbath. As ridiculous as it may sound today, this law was once taken very seriously. People were expected to refrain from any unnecessary activities on Sundays, and bathing, being associated with personal comfort and luxury, was considered inappropriate for the day. While the law is obviously not enforced today, it still technically exists on the books. The fact that such a personal and routine activity as bathing was once considered a violation of moral conduct speaks to the extent to which Sunday laws sought to regulate almost every aspect of life. Despite its clear obsolescence, the law stands as an odd historical reminder of the strict moral codes that governed much of early American society, especially in the southern states, where religious observance was of paramount importance. No buying cars on Sundays, Illinois and Colorado. In Illinois and Colorado, a curious remnant of blue laws still exists. You cannot buy a car on Sundays. While you can browse vehicles and test drive them, making a purchase is technically against the law. These laws were originally designed to restrict business activities on Sundays and allow workers a day of rest, particularly in religious communities that observed the Sabbath. Sunday was meant to be a day of worship, reflection, and family time, and commerce was seen as a distraction from these ideals. Over time, many states abandoned these laws, but Illinois and Colorado continue to hold on to this outdated regulation. While no one is likely to be arrested for trying to buy a car on a Sunday, it remains a legal quirk that still impacts the industry. Car dealerships are forced to close or remain closed on Sundays, forcing customers to wait until the next day to complete their purchase. This law, which was once implemented to protect workers' rights and promote rest, now stands as an interesting example of how society has evolved in terms of commerce and the workplace. While car buying is no longer a religious or moral issue, this law continues to linger in some parts of the country, leaving us to wonder if it will ever be repealed. It's illegal to sell alcohol cold, Indiana. In Indiana, one of the most perplexing laws still on the books makes it illegal to sell alcohol cold. Beer, wine, and other alcoholic beverages must be sold at room temperature. The law was enacted decades ago in an effort to prevent impulse drinking, based on the idea that warm beer would discourage people from drinking excessively. The reasoning behind the law was that consumers were less likely to buy alcohol if it wasn't at the optimal drinking temperature, thus cutting down on impulse buying and binge drinking. While this law may have seemed logical at the time, it is now considered outdated and inconvenient. Despite the widespread popularity of cold beer and the modern understanding of alcohol consumption, this strange law is still enforced in some areas of Indiana. It remains a fascinating relic of a bygone era, reflecting how public policy once sought to regulate personal behavior in ways that seem odd today. In a time when cold beer is synonymous with refreshment, it's hard to imagine a world where selling warm beer was a legal necessity. Yet, this outdated law remains a reminder of the ways in which local laws once aimed to shape behavior and influence consumption patterns. No collecting rainwater, Colorado and Oregon. In certain states like Colorado and Oregon, it's technically illegal to collect rainwater on your own property without a permit. The reasoning behind this strange law is rooted in water rights. Specifically, the idea that rainwater is not owned by individuals, but rather by the state. These laws were created to ensure that water resources are controlled and distributed properly, preventing people from stockpiling rainwater that could disrupt local water supplies. While it may seem odd that something as natural as rainwater would be regulated, these laws reflect a long-standing tradition of controlling natural resources. In some areas, collecting rainwater could lead to fines or penalties if the proper permits are not obtained. The law, though rarely enforced, has sparked debates about personal property rights and the role of the state in managing natural resources. On one hand, these laws aim to prevent water hoarding and ensure fair distribution. On the other hand, they raise questions about individuals' rights to utilize the resources that fall on their property. While the practice of collecting rainwater is seen as environmentally friendly and sustainable in modern times, these laws remain in place to control water rights and maintain the balance of supply and demand in certain areas. The laws that time forgot. As strange as some of these laws may seem, they are a fascinating reflection of the past, revealing much about the moral, social, and political values of their time. Many were intended to regulate public behavior and maintain order in societies that had very different expectations than we do today. Despite being outdated, some of these laws are still technically enforceable, though they are almost never acted upon. They remain on the books as curious historical artifacts, representing a time when societal norms were strictly enforced through legal means. Whether it's the ban on ice cream cones on Sundays or the prohibition against wearing red dresses, these laws offer a glimpse into a world where personal freedoms were often constrained by the cultural and religious values of the time. What's even more interesting is how these odd laws still spark conversations today, reminding us how much the world has changed over the past few decades. While many of these laws are no longer relevant, they continue to serve as quirky reminders of how far we've come. What's the weirdest law you've ever heard of? Drop a comment and let us know. And remember to like and subscribe for more bizarre facts from history.